Hello and welcome back to In Service to Transformation with me, your host, Claire Darnell. This week, I meet with a wonderful human, Bela Crowder. Bella is somebody I met through initially having an astrology reading. There was something about the astrology work that Bella was sharing that really spoke to me in terms of the language that she used and the way that she was viewing the world. And I was really immediately drawn to, understand how she knew more about my soul and its thoughts and feelings. It was not surprising to me when I reached out and we discovered that we had quite a lot of similarities in our charts. But she's been somebody who, through that avenue, has actually helped me to track a great deal of changes, significant changes in my life. But the most important thing about Bella and the work that I've done with her over the last few years has been her work around the creation of the embodied heart. And I'm not going to try to define and tell you what the embodied heart is because it's Bella's creation. But what I can tell you is it's a profound, life changing creation. And I know that it touches the hearts of many. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Bella, to allow you to hear more about her journey, her story, and to learn more about the ways that she has arrived in the place that she is today as a creator of this wonderful modality. So, hello, Bella. It's so good to have you here. I feel excited.
Yeah, hi Claire. It's really good to be here. Mm.
Yum. I've got little chills and shivers going up and down my arms, and it's yeah, it just feels, I feel really alive. I feel really alive to be here with you. And a lot
Mm.
of that, I think, is because I've learned how to feel alive, through some of the work that we've done. So thank you for that. Um, so there's usually a sort of a beginning point that
Mm.
we start to access a journey of healing. And for some, it's a big bang, it's like an aha or a rock bottom. And for
Mm.
others, it's a creeper. We're just aware that there's
Mm.
something more. And I'm
Mm.
always curious to hear from people what their journey has been. So, would you say there was a period of time or a moment that you thought, I need to change?
Definitely, definitely. I
Mm,
was going through a really painful um, breakup, ending of a relationship, my first big heartbreak, and yeah, experiencing severe anxiety and a lot of guilt and shame and overwhelm and really just not knowing what was going on inside of me, just feeling horrible and needing answers. Um, so I was initiated through discomfort, that's for
mhm,
sure, and initially a search to alleviate and ease the discomfort. Yeah.
yeah.
And I can speak a little bit about that journey, which initially was just,
Mm,
oh, can I see a therapist? And going to see a therapist, and having no references, no um, models in my life for personal development or healing or
mm,
transformational work. So that was my first avenue, and going in there and unpacking childhood, which was very just completely new and
mm,
eye opening, and um, slowly realized though that there was a whole world of personal development and spirituality and different modalities. It's just like I opened this door, just started to peek into this
mm.
universe I had no clue existed, and there was a long journey that came after that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so you say you entered initially via the therapeutic process with a
yeah,
therapist. And that in itself can be deeply transformational. I mean, I'll speak for myself, but for me, it allowed me to, I guess, lay some tracks to allow me
mm,
to lay down a framework of, as you say, like oh, like there's some stuff here in the childhood. So it was unpicking that and creating almost a map to how did I end up here? And then I think through that kind of groundwork, I was able to access, yeah, the possibility of looking for me. It was like, but there's more. Like, is this
Yeah.
it? What more is there? So I'm
Hmm.
curious, where did your journey go from there in terms of accessing healing and trying new things?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely recognized in therapy that there was a lot of um, unfelt, unmetabolized aspects and parts of me,
Mm,
but it wasn't really providing the space at that moment to go there. There was a lot of understanding, which was and compassion eventually for myself,
yes.
but that eventually led me to just choose to go overseas actually because I wanted something different. But at that time I was at uni, I was partying a lot, I was doing drugs and, in a scene that just wasn't supportive at all. And I think there was a deeper part of me that knew, oh, I need to change environments. So I went overseas and went on exchange, came to Europe and spent 6 months in Europe where I just had no desire to make friends. I just went inwards for the first time in my life and started listening to podcasts actually. It was, yeah, started just searching spirituality or
Yeah.
and listening to podcasts and then I remember listening to a podcast and they were talking about a shaman and I had no clue what a shaman was.
Yeah.
But I was listening to this podcast, and then I searched. I was in Barcelona at the time, and I searched shaman in Barcelona,
Love it.
and
Good old Google.
and and then and it was actually through meeting this woman, this older woman, and journeying deep with breath work, and also different kind of shamanic journeying
Mm,
where I started to surrender and make contact with different aspects of myself and surrender to the potential of like a, a different intelligence, a
mm,
different quality of kind of looking at the world and, um, you know, making relationships with guides of mine and a
mm,
more intuitive kind of way of meeting the world. And that
yeah.
really was massive for me. And the biggest moments were really how that level of surrender allowed me to open to deep feeling. So I remember doing a breathwork journey and surrendering to a level of grief I had never accessed before. Like my body just took over and I was there grieving for 3-4 hours,
Mm,
and really just opening to new levels of self-awareness and compassion and relief in my body. That was a very profound experience.
mm.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I want to kind of dive deeper a little bit there,
Mm.
around the levels of self-awareness. What were the things that really you became aware of in that process in particular?
Yeah. I really remember this moment of I had these friends. I'll tell this part of the story with this context. I had these friends I grew up in Bali, and I
Mm,
had these friends that grew up, um, and they had spiritual teachers, and their family was quite connected and spiritual. They and I never understood it.
yeah.
And I was a teenager, and in my early 20s, I had judgment, a lot of judgment around that sort of lifestyle or those choices. And I remember in this breath work allowing the grief to move through me, I got it. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, wow. And all the judgment and all the voices of separation and all of the shame and the blame, not just with those friends, but it's almost like a layer of separation just melted. And not only did I have compassion for myself, but it's almost like uh, that I had access to compassion for everybody
Yes.
in that moment. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this was through breath work, right? Let me get that woman's digits because that sounds profound. But,
Yes, yeah, it was through breathwork, and I hadn't gone there before, so there was a lot of pent
yeah.
up um, emotion and feeling and hardness, and I came from a lot of numbness and a lot of
Mm,
suppression, and it, it was very difficult for me to feel prior to that moment.
mm,
I found it very difficult to have any kind of compassion or relate to myself with softness. There was so much agenda and firmness and needing to fix and heal. And this was just a
yes.
moment of like allowing the breath work really pulled me into a level of presence that
Yes.
didn't give room to the mind's mechanisms uh,
Yeah.
to come in and sabotage the experience. I just had to go there.
Yes.
Well, I
Absolutely.
chose to go there. Yeah.
Mm. And I think
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing to hear actually is these perspectives on, breath work being something that allows us to go there because I think there's a lot of movement towards plant medicine and plant medicine has its place. And my experience is actually because I got clean before I discovered this kind of route of healing and these options. A lot like you, I was kind of quite blinkered to
Yeah.
plant ceremony and things like that. And I've made a choice in the last 12 years not to experiment or journey with plant medicine in so much as I use, rose oil, I use cacao. These are plant
Yeah.
medicines. But I haven't journeyed with ayahuasca and I haven't journeyed with mushrooms. And what I've experienced is I've had some profoundly opening experiences
Mm.
through meditation, through breath work, through
Yeah.
sound healing that for me have felt just as connected. So I think for those who
Totally.
maybe don't feel that, there are people who choose not to journey with psychotropic versions of plant medicine,
Yeah.
there are other ways
Yeah.
to achieve that
Oh,
opening,
100%.
that enlightenment connection. Mm, yeah.
Totally. I feel that plant medicine, it brings a vitality that is not ours. So we're like borrowing the vitality of the plant
Yes.
to access or open or sometimes like drill through parts of us that are, um, holding on or in control. But I think the trap with plant medicine is after uh, often I feel the lack of integration that
Mm,
happens. Like I have a big moment of like a peak experience, but then if I don't integrate, if I don't consciously choose to practice,
mm,
to embody what I learned, then I'm just going to bounce back to where I was. And there can be, like any substance, an addiction to just the opening, the bigness, and the
yes.
oh yeah, it all makes sense. And then a week later, you forget it all.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. And I have experienced that in others. I have witnessed that in others. And it is, yeah, it is a case of just continuously going back to the plant and it's like, where's the integration? So yeah, I really appreciate you raising
yeah,
that. So after this opening with the breath work and this awakening, this spiritual awakening, let's call it, where did you go from there? Because you're open, right? You have these
right.
possibilities available
Yes,
to you.
yes. Yeah, so at the time I was also really getting more and more into astrology. So
Yeah.
I was like studying architecture at the time, but really studying astrology, just like obsessing. And at that time, there was no intention for me to be an astrologer, but I just wanted to understand my own chart. And so that was a big journey for me, just exploring astrology, and how that opened me up to different worlds. But I did realize that, after maybe a year, or two, how I was trying to solve myself. I was trying to figure me out through astrology, and I guess solve in some way the problem of me, through analysis, through psychology, through astrology, through anything I could grab onto. And so I started to really, I guess, reference that moment where I opened, and I knew I was starting to become more and more aware that I need to get in my body. And so that was a journey of exploring dance and breath work and bioenergetics and different modalities to just start to kind of drop me out of my head and into my body, going to different, retreats and going to Ista and going and experiencing emotional release and, shaking rituals, and just eventually filtering through all the experience, filtering more and more towards what really felt nourishing and supportive for me.
Yes.
Yeah. And I did go in a bit hard at the start, which was a big lesson. Like,
Yeah.
punch the pillow and scream it out, but in an intensity that I was like trying to get rid of the trauma, like, or the demons inside of me, like, get them out, get them out.
Yeah.
And yeah, through more gentle ways of meeting myself, I started to admit that that wasn't loving. And I don't feel that it's necessarily that those modalities aren't loving, but it was the way that I was, uh,
Yeah.
implementing them. Yeah.
Mm.
And so I kind of took the road of gentleness and more and more recognize, my work, my medicine is compassion. And I think that word gets thrown around a lot, but to really meet ourselves with compassion, with no agenda, with acceptance, with patience, with love. I mean, now you know this about me, that I will say
Yeah.
that really is the deepest and most profound medicine. And yeah, that became obvious to me through just exploring a wide spectrum of ways of meeting myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm listening that even I can feel the effect on my body, on my somatic experience, is to receive that with ease. It's like a balm. The concept of having compassion for oneself,
Yeah.
acceptance for oneself, and not overriding is so simple as a concept,
Yeah.
but we find it
Yes.
so hard to access. And I really identify with that, going in hard. There's
Yeah.
something about human nature and our programming, and I think very much about the world that we live in, that there is this urgency that we apply to our healing paths of I've got to fix
Totally.
this now. I found the thing, and this will be the thing that will fix me. And we can just go ham, you know? So you were talking about the sacred rage and getting the pillows and all that. And there's a
Yeah,
place for that, actually. There have been
totally.
times when I've really needed to outpour and purge something that's moving through me.
Yes.
But if you're needing to do that every day, I
Yes.
think there's a question of how much actually are we leaving ourselves in that process, and are we really being present with the grief and the sorrow and the pain
Yeah.
that sits underneath that? Because for me, anger can be a really useful mask and avoidance technique,
Hmm.
to mask my sadness, you know, and my grief,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yes.
underneath, or my fear, you know, there's a myriad of things that sit underneath.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel that, I mean, we like what is familiar, and we like humans. We um
Mm,
we need egoically references, um, and understanding, for safety. And so often I see in spaces where there is, you know, emotional release, or even embodiment spaces, or
mm,
spaces that invite vulnerability, there can be a trap where we start to just loop in the narrative of I, or the object of, let's say, rage, right? In this case, like,
mm,
I'm angry at this person,
yes.
and I'm gonna, and of course I think that there's a necessary, or it can be really, really supportive and liberating to go there and to run that anger at a person. But there is a moment where we need to choose to then
Mm,
come inward and just meet the experience of rage itself, rather than I am angry at, or,
mm,
and I think that's a missing piece in a
yeah.
lot of spaces, is is the trap of getting so seduced by the narrative and the story, and like, it's like jerking off on our on our narrative, on our story, again and
Yeah.
again and again, because it is liberating, but then it feels good,
Mm,
and then it's just a temporary relief.
mm,
Um, and I can geek out and nerd out about the like fine details of when someone is, truly feeling, and like in the slipstream of not knowing, and engaging with their felt experience,
mm,
and trusting and surrendering to that experience, or when I am having to pull out a narrative to trigger the emotion, and then I have to keep going back to the narrative to keep the emotion alive,
yeah.
is a very, I would call that emotional reactivity rather than
Yes.
feeling.
Mm,
Yeah. So, but I've only become so obsessed, you could say, or like, about this, because I really did it all. I
yeah.
reacted and thought I was feeling, and I treated myself like a problem to solve, and tried
Yeah.
to, get it all out of me, and yeah, to realize, oh, this isn't very loving.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Mm. And I think just to sort of go back, you were speaking about, you know, movement and dance practices that you started to try and all of these things. And one of the things
Mm,
I know about you is you're deeply authentic. So
mm,
I think that there's an access point that we are able to reach in terms of really being in our authenticity and our essence when we allow ourselves to really feel.
yeah.
So, you know, what's more delicious and more yummy and more attractive than just really being able to be
Mm,
who we are?
right. Exactly.
in all of it, you know, like just our fullness.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm,
Yeah, and I guess what comes to me when you say that is the I recognize that being me, being truly me, and surrendering to who I am, being authentic, without any kind of control or, mechanisms of contortion or
mm,
suppression, requires self-love,
yes.
yeah, self-acceptance, an acceptance of who I am so that I can just be me. And for me, the pathway to self-love and acceptance is feeling,
Yes.
because really it's not about, you know, what I say or taking myself to the salon or getting a massage. I mean, all of that is definitely part of it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's important that those actions are birthed from me getting intimate with myself.
Mm,
Because, and what I mean by intimate is feeling, like bringing
yeah.
my awareness into my body, slowing down enough so I can actually meet myself in a moment like, oh, hey, yeah, here I am.
Mm,
Yeah. Like, we can just go through the day at a speed way faster than our actual authentic pace.
mm,
And I call that like being separate from ourselves. We're not
yeah.
actually with ourselves feeling. So for me, the definition of feeling is intimacy. Like,
Mm,
here I am speaking to you, but I still am engaged with myself, with my body. There is some reference of me that I am aware of.
mm,
And that's where then I can start to choose to be kind, choose to be loving, choose to just accept what I am feeling, what I'm experiencing without judgment or the agenda, like we were saying before, to fix or to change
mm,
or to suppress.
mm,
I'm just allowing me as I am in this moment, whether I like it or not,
mm,
to be me. And I say that can be confusing, I think, to some people. Like, you can love you, loving me and liking what I'm experiencing are two different things.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hate that I'm experiencing all of this anxiety, and I
Mm,
can choose to be present with myself, slow down, and be non-judgmental. And it's okay. Even though I wish it would be different, it's okay. I'm here.
yeah.
Just like I'm not a mother, but maybe a mother would be to a toddler that is screaming. Like, there is a preference for the
Yeah.
toddler to stop screaming,
Yeah.
but I'm here, present. What do you need?
Yeah. Still loving
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think because I was just sitting here thinking, wow, this conversation is so Piscean, you know, like it feels really like,
Yeah.
woo, like almost esoteric, actually. And I think, you know, I remember when I first started working with you, I mean, gosh, what are we looking with? Like 5 years ago? I don't know, a long time ago.
Wow.
And I remember how confused I was
Right.
about what we were trying to do. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
but the story is really important. And our sessions would be, you know, like let's say we had an hour, like 40 minutes of it would be me sharing all the stories of all the things I
Yeah.
was really cross about or that had happened to me or because of
Mm.
somebody else. And that was what I learned. And I think what's important to share with those who are listening who are thinking, I don't really get how this works, is that mental chatter, you know, that
Right.
the ego, the
Yes.
head is
Yes.
loud. It's so
Yes.
loud. And I
Yes.
think we learn to walk through the world just functioning with this critic or this observer constantly running its commentary, and we
Yes.
normalize it.
Hmm.
We kind of integrate that in as, oh, this is the truth up here in the head.
Yes,
And
exactly.
well, my experience is whatever your head says, like do the opposite, like just don't listen to your head. Um, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I that is a skill and a muscle,
Mm,
and to be the skill in not investing in the mind's
yeah.
thoughts. Like you say, don't listen. Uh, there is, I think, yeah, this is a point I could speak about internal safety, because um, depending on how safe I am internally, meaning
Mm,
um, my capacity to stay present with myself and not need to go to my head to manage my experience, or
mm,
my nervous system doesn't take over, which is all dependent on our history. Um, yeah, but that muscle can be built, the muscle of, oh, I'm choosing to be present with myself, and every time I choose that, I'm doing a rep and building that muscle of internal safety.
mm,
Yeah, and the safer we are internally, the less we have to rely on our head, our
yeah.
mind, for safety. And 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 the more we can trust our hearts to um, guide us through life, and the more we can trust the intangible quality of the heart's wisdom, which
Mm,
isn't like based on evidence and proof and like the mind is, but it's a feeling. It's hard to grasp onto, but the more safety that is built, the more trust is there.
mm,
The louder the heart gets, the clearer
yeah.
the connection, and the easier it is not to get seduced or consumed by the mind. But of course, we are all human, and we are always going to have to uh, uh, deal with or negotiate in different
Yeah.
moments, especially if the guidance, let's say, is a high risk to the ego.
Mm,
Like I'm getting some guidance to leave a relationship or leave the job, a job that I've been in that provides a lot of security,
yeah.
or there is a risk to our um, ego's sense of security, and a very real risk. But the heart doesn't care about going broke or
Yeah.
heartbreak. It just wants what is true, and wants what is loving, which is not always our idea of loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think when there is a high risk to the ego,
Mm,
it can feel difficult to hear the heart, and we can struggle with a lot of confusion. Like, what
mm,
is true? Is it this or is it that? And every time a client comes to me with that, I think that's a very like relatable challenge in life. Like, is it this choice, or is it what's my heart and what's my mind and what
yes.
is true? I always say, if you don't know, just admit that you don't know, and don't try to figure it out with your mind, because
Yes.
your mind will always have evidence for both, because the mind doesn't want you to change, right? The nervous system is wired to stay safe, to stay the
Mm,
same. Yeah, I
yeah.
could go on, Claire,
Oh, and I could listen to you, Bella.
so you lead this,
Oh, I'm just going to
because
sit
we are
back.
both
It's so.
Pisces.
Well, what was occurring to me as you were sharing as well, and I was thinking how synonymous the heart is, because you obviously work with the embodied heart as a concept, but for me,
Yeah.
the heart is synonymous with my soul. It's my soul's
Yes.
purpose. It's my soul's
Yes.
journey is, my deep knowing of what is just and what is right for myself, for others, what is for the greatest good. And yeah,
Yes.
and my head is my humanness. It's my egoic humanness that's just trying to survive in this crazy world. And yeah, that kind of occurred to me as you were
Yes.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Mm,
And for me, yeah, I had one piece on this is
mm,
how can we create harmony and a loving relationship between the two rather than
mm.
like kill the ego or
Yeah,
destroy the mind, but
yeah,
how can the mind be of service to the soul, the heart?
yes.
Yeah.
And that sort of leads quite nicely into, I was actually reflecting. I love how the mind's constantly doing this, right? So as I'm
Yeah.
listening to you and I'm feeling you, that here we are. This is the literal kind of,
Yes.
this is how it works. The head is giving me all of the reference points and the stories, and this time quite collaboratively. So I'm grateful for you, mind. Thank you. Um, but I'm just referencing the times that we really, I feel like, had some real breakthroughs in the work that we did together, were the times that we actually found some humor. So there were those aha
Mm.
moments of, oh, I see you. And I think we did some work around this concept that I had of being selfish, inverted commas.
Yes. Yes.
I'm so selfish, and like the taint and the disgust that I had toward myself initially, on pulling
Yes.
on that word, that descriptor, and then like actually getting under the bones of it and realizing, so what? Yeah, I am
Yeah.
selfish. Yeah, I'm really selfish. And then what would ensue on the back of that, and what still to this day actually comes through, is this freedom from
Mm.
being selfish to this elation, like this recognition of self, of like, yeah, I'm totally selfish because I'm human and it's okay
Yeah.
for me to be selfish. Of course, I can only see things from my perspective. I'm in my perspective. And so I think, for me, some of that growth came in the lightening up, because,
Right.
a lot of this work
Yeah.
can feel really heavy, and the heart
Totally.
wants to feel joy. The heart wants
Yes.
to set you free. The
Yes.
heart wants you to just see yourself in lightness and expansion of all the amazing things, as well as feeling your sorrow and your grief and your pain.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. I have an in-person group that I facilitate,
Mm,
and last night I was sharing about, I often see when people enter um, most kind of embodiment work where there is some subtle agenda to get somewhere,
yeah.
get to the breakthrough or heal the trauma, that um, I just reminded them that that's not actually the intention of feeling, right? That is sometimes there's a beautiful meeting of our suppressed grief and our suppressed rage and a reclamation and a
Mm,
forgiving, but really for me it's about meeting, like you're saying, the wisdom of the heart, which is these moments of like, ah, I'm actually okay. Like I tell myself all day that I'm not okay. But the truth in my heart, different to the opinions of my mind, is I'm doing good.
yeah.
Or like I remember I had such a big moment of when I was in a workshop where it was almost like a cosmic, the cosmic joke just like shattering in front of me of like I tell myself I'm alone, right?
Mm,
Like, oh, like, at this time journeying, like no one can meet me or no one understands me or some kind of narrative like that. Like I'm all alone and there's this narrative of separateness. And then through feeling and then accessing the wisdom of my heart, I just started cacking up laughing.
mm,
and I was just like saying out loud, like, I'm not alone. I tell myself I'm alone. It's hilarious. It's and I've had many moments of that, just like actually the beauty of meeting the wisdom of the heart is just the relief
Yeah.
of trusting. I don't have to work so hard, like just like constant like trying so hard
Yeah.
to stay safe. Bless us, to stay safe and to get somewhere and to succeed and to do it good. And really, I think, yeah, that beautiful relief of it's like the cliche that it's all perfect.
Mm.
Everything is perfect, but you really do meet that truth as an embodied knowing in the heart.
Yeah.
It's all perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the back of that relief, really, my experience is this space.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
space, it creates a space. The relief is like, and the expansion comes. And then we ultimately grow into that space. So there's more of us. We're meeting more of our truths,
Yeah.
more of our essence, more
Yeah.
of our whatever needs to come through that you've been holding back for fear of not surviving in the world. We're allowed to occupy that space and give ourselves
Yes.
permission. And it's a stunning process. Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. So I'm really keen to, I mean, we've touched on the work that you're doing, but if we were to flip it and just allow people to understand what it is that you are offering to others, how
Yeah.
it works, like in what formats you're sharing your work currently, and how people might be able to
Mm.
access this.
Sure.
What's going down?
What's going down? So, yeah, my work, the work of the embodied heart, which is a kind of one of the entry points into my work. Yeah, which is an online group container and an 8-week container, which really starts to introduce some of the pieces we've been talking about today. Um, the muscle we are building is internal security, and the tool we're using is feeling. And we're really in that space. You're really supported to get intimate with yourself in ways that are quite new and sometimes confronting,
Mm,
um, because it means getting honest. Um, what I mean by that is not just self-awareness, not just like I have this belief about myself or I have this bad habit or addiction, but really getting inside of the habit or the pattern or the addiction,
mm,
in the body, and meeting where I am grasping for the relief of, or where I am refusing to let go of control, like getting inside of the refusal, or where I am so unwilling to let go of a really painful belief about myself,
yeah,
or where I'm terrified. A lot of the entry point is actually where people starting to admit, wow, I'm actually scared.
yes.
Like when I get honest with myself,
Mm,
which is what the space is there to support you to do, and my job really is to
yeah,
support you to get honest. It's often that people are surprised by, wow, how much fear they're carrying around in their
mm,
bodies unconsciously, and
yeah,
how that fear from the unconscious is dictating so many of our habits and patterns that keep us stuck in places and situations and with people and cycles that we consciously want to change,
yes,
but we are not intimate with where we are actually choosing those things from. And this is what feeling really allows us to access. So it's sinking underneath the mind and all of the overthinking and the analysis and the trying to figure myself out, and sinking and dropping into the body and meeting the honest truth of where am I right now? Oh, I think I am wanting change, but really, if I'm honest, I refuse to let go of control, for example.
Familiar. Yeah.
I think for all of us.
Yeah.
And that's just the beauty. It's a very simple feeling. Like you were saying before about compassion and self-love, the concept, speaking to it is simple. Like you drop into your heart and you meet yourself without an agenda, with love, with kindness, without needing to know what's coming next, but actually in practice, because the mechanisms of avoidance and protection are so complex and intelligent. Yeah, it's that's what really we're learning to navigate, learning to love the fear, learning to love the refusal, learning to love the anger or the grief, all the parts that have been denied or shamed or judged or pushed to the side are welcomed in the space to be loved, to be forgiven, to be integrated. Yeah. So there's my Piscean answer for you. But
Welcome to, yeah. It was
the
making me, it was just making me reflect on how much of the work that you offer is actually becoming comfortable in the unknown. Just
yes,
literally surrendering to, I actually don't know what happens next. And
yes,
that is pure relinquishment of control. And that
yes,
for most human beings is a scary concept. And pulling on my own reference again, I recall how much shame was such a mechanism for me in protecting myself from not knowing. So as soon as I would try to drop into, anywhere down into my body, shame would kick in, even in the way that it
yes,
would say, you're not doing this right, like it was just
yes,
instant. And
exactly.
that sloughing off of that. Oh, there it is again, the shame that just
Yeah,
feeling my heart close, and then being able to visualize that hard shell that I'd built around my heart,
yes.
literal
Yeah.
walls of self-sufficient protection that would just,
Mhm.
and the delightfulness of when you come into relationship with that, and you can really see and feel and be there in that space. And I'm really there now, and I'm sort of seeing how big and nebulous and tender my heart is,
Yeah.
how she just longs to expand and just feel me and meet
Mm.
me at all of my edges and pervade everything that I
Mm.
think, feel, do. And
Yes.
when I allow her to be that for me, it's just delicious.
Yeah.
it's it's such a profound healing journey that you offer, and it's like nothing I've ever experienced from
Yeah.
any of the other things that I have learned, that I teach. It's really
Yes.
unique and special.
Yes. It's very intimate work,
Mm,
as you know. Um,
mm,
it's really me meeting as vulnerably and in my humanity, meeting another human
mm,
and inviting you know you to be here, naked, open, available, or at least just honest about where you don't want to be, that you
mm,
don't want to. It's just, can we just be real right now here with each other,
mm,
and with the group, and then the work is, can we accept ourselves in our realness?
mm,
Yeah. And of course, like you were sharing, sometimes that means confronting the habits of shaming ourselves or judging ourselves. And this space really highlights those habits that are actually on all the time, but we're just not aware of it.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
then gives us an opportunity to to meet and love and integrate. But you know, I feel that sometimes intimacy scares a lot of people,
Yes.
but it's what we all long for and deeply crave, but also are so terrified of at the same time.
Mm.
So I feel that about the work. It's like, oof, I so want it, and now I'm going to have to look at all my avoidance,
Yes.
and that's uncomfortable. Yeah.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know we work together. I think I've journeyed the Embodied Heart maybe 2 or 3 times, but we've worked together one-to-one as well. And that
Mm.
level of intimacy is, yeah, is significant. And I
Yeah.
do understand that it enabled me to become more intimate in relationships outside of the one that I was
Yeah.
sharing with you. And I think one of the fascinating things about the work that I did with you is it was obviously until I met you in London and you came to stay,
Yeah.
everything was online, but it didn't
Yeah.
impact the intimacy that we were able to share actually
Yeah.
in those
Yeah.
practices. Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Mm,
beautiful, isn't it? Yeah,
mm,
it still translates
mm. And just,
some miraculous way.
yeah, and just really noticing. In fact, I think it in some ways enhances because
Mm.
there's just that my talking head, your talking head, our eye
Yeah.
gazing. There's
Yes.
that element of really isolating it down to what's important here, and it's that witnessing, the witnessing
Yes.
element, being
Yeah.
witnessed and being a witness too. And I think that term is used a lot in healing spaces. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, everyone just wants to be witnessed. But what is it really
Mm.
to be witnessed? To be witnessed is
Yes.
not to be seen and then have somebody else's judgments or,
Exactly.
necessarily reflections. It's literally to be accepted in your experience exactly as you are. And I truly believe we can't do
Yeah.
that unless we can be with our own experience, which is taking us all the way back to the beginning, right? Of what you were talking
Exactly.
about. And it's
Yes.
how do I stay with me in my experience while you're having your experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's such valuable work for those who are embarking upon a journey of personal healing, but also, I believe, for facilitators to be
Definitely.
able to
Most definitely.
access. Like, if you want to
Yeah.
be able to be a great facilitator, this work is essential.
Yes. Yeah. It's always surprising and now less and less surprising, but how just most people aren't intimate with themselves in this way. I don't know how to feel
Mm,
in really when in my definition of that.
mm,
And I just feel that everyone will be is supported by this journey. And
mm.
I'm, yes, like a crazy feeling enthusiast, but I haven't been proven wrong.
Being an enthusiast, I love that. And so I noticed that, so obviously you've got the Embodied Heart container, you're available
Yes.
one-to-one. And then I
Yes.
noticed that recently you did a weekend-long retreat. I was suffering from serious FOMO the whole weekend. It was over in Australia.
It was
And
6
you
days
planned,
actually.
oh, God, so unfair. And there were so many people that, I saw a good handful of people that I admire and love that were there. I know some other
Yeah,
people that I've worked with and that I'm in connection with had been there, and it looked really potent.
it
Are
was.
you
Yeah.
planning to do any more of those?
I definitely will be doing another retreat, but that likely won't happen till the start of next year, most likely end of Jan or February in
Mhm.
Australia. But there will be, before that, there will be like 2-day immersions and potentially in Europe that in towards the end of the year too. Yeah.
Amazing.
And there is another offering of mine that will be it's more like a entry level, less kind of one-to-one intimate time with me, but for people and lower costs. So for people to get a taste, and really understand the work before they commit to diving in, and that'll be coming out in like two months.
Oh,
Um,
that's exciting.
yeah, yeah, that excites me. Yeah, I feel that I really am so passionate about the fact that if everyone was willing or even knew that self-intimacy had such a wild and loving ripple effect on the world, yeah, you know, if everyone just chose to meet themselves, even just a little bit, I feel that the world would change drastically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hope it's still I'm still learning how to reach a lot of people because I so love intimacy in containers and working with people one to one. But I think that will widen.
Yeah. I mean, my experience also of journeying in group containers with you is there's that vortex or that spiral of connectivity that's created even in witnessing a group go through a process. And I just think there is, yeah, whatever we personally perceive the thing to be, it has its own life force, right? So
Yeah.
operating within a room of 20, for instance, would take on its own energy, its own essence, its own thread of
Yeah.
medicine. So yeah, I'm excited to see how that will morph and change for you. Yeah. And yeah, it's such necessary medicine for change and for transformation the world needs right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
yum, 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 yum. I mindful of time, so I'm thinking
Yes.
it would be really maybe a nice time now I always like to circle around and
Yeah.
always give a pearl of wisdom or a nugget to those who might be embarking upon a healing journey. So drawing from your own experience or from that you teach, would you have anything you'd like to share with a listener who's embarking upon their own healing journey that you feel might be of use to them?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. What comes to me straight away is really do your best not to relate to yourself like a problem to solve. Yeah. And when you become aware of that, just admit it. Oh, I'm 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 making myself a problem, or I'm making this feeling a problem, or I'm making this, internal conflict a problem. And see if you can choose kindness in that moment, or a little bit more surrender, a little bit more love. Yeah.
Rules for life. And for those in the
Yes.
facilitation space, so
Yeah.
I think I may have said this at the start, but there's a blend of
Yeah.
listeners here who are sort of facilitators and those who are healing. So what would your reflections be for those individuals?
Sure. For the people that are already facilitating or wanting
Yeah,
to
or
facilitate.
having us. Thank you for the clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, for either, for those who want to embark upon their own journey of being of service to transformation. Yeah. So whether they're
Yeah.
doing it now and want to.
Yeah. I feel it's so deeply important to really make contact to what you're in service to. And of course, you're human, and we're all human, and sometimes we will be in service to our own egoic agenda, but really it's so important to find that relationship to like the deeper longing or the deeper calling, and really remember that. I think especially at the start when there can be nervousness or self-doubt, or the inner critic is louder, to just remember, who am I in service to right now, or what am I in service to right now?
Mm.
and then it can just help to just ease, yeah, where the ego wants to get all involved and distort or kind of affect the course. Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
And there's a magnetism and a resonance in that. Yeah.
that's gold. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whew. Thank you so much. Yeah, I could
Yeah.
literally speak to you for hours and hours and hours, but yeah, it's just been real soul food. And yeah, if people want to get in touch with Bella, just hit me up, hit Bella up. I'll make sure you're tagged in the posts on
Right.
Insta and across the
Yeah.
the broadcasting channels. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to connect with you again. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I could keep speaking for a long time, which is a good sign because I'm not always like this. So thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.